Some time ago, I got a message through my Instagram that got me pretty giddy, and I knew that I should at least play this one very close to the chest because I could get excited for something that may not pan out. But through a series of further Instagram messages and emails, I was invited to an offsite event hosted by Queen Studios / INART involving some new products and kind of like a meet and greet / mingle / Q&A style of event during the weekend of San Diego Comic-Con. And at the time, I just didn't know what I could really talk about or what it was going to be entailed. This was kind of sort of my first thing, or my first event, my first occasion of being invited to this sort of thing. And so I wanted, like I said, to be discreet and as nuanced as possible. I waited until the actual day to go to this thing after attending panels on Thursday and going through San Diego Comic-Con, the whole minutia of that, which you guys can check out in my separate, really lengthy 45-minute video as to what my true thoughts are about San Diego Comic-Con. But I did want to, as I hinted in that video, want to make a separate video showcasing and talking about the potential new line that Queen Studios / INART has up their sleeve to tackle the 1/12 scale market. So Friday comes along, we get there, we're kind of waiting for them to set up, and finally the event starts. We head in, my girlfriend starts piling on a bunch of like meats or I think there was like black bean sliders and chips and very expensive $10 jar mustard, and she was just kind of targeting the charcuterie board, which admittedly was pretty tasty. So kudos to INART for kind of knowing who the proper caterers were to get this sort of thing, as well as a couple of nifty little desserts on the side. So she was having the time of her life with that spread. And afterwards, my gaze then deviated towards the figures that they had on the table to showcase and take photos of and pictures of. So on one side, you had predominantly the 1/6 scale line, which I know most of you are probably familiar a little bit with INART. So INART, a subsidiary of Queen Studios, or I think INART started and then Queen Studios kind of bought them out. And they're the ones that are mainly focused on 1/6 scale figures. So pretty much, and they've kind of been asked this, and they pretty much kind of hinted at this being the case. They're right now, I'm saying pretty much too much, but they're kind of the closest to a Hot Toys competitor as it can get within the market, where they're tackling something that's very photorealistic, but still within the 1/6 scale kind of tier, and still being able to deliver on articulation, proper clothing, proper accessories, and making sure that you get that quality premium product that you can pose and kind of move around without kind of subjugating to being a statue. And on the majority of these 1/6 scale figures were figures that you've already seen before, whether it be some of the older ones, like the two Aragorns, the one that's just the standard premium figure with the sculpted hair, and then one with the rooted hair. And then you also had I think the rooted hair Bruce Wayne from the Batman series. So strangely enough, they didn't have Batman, like the Batman, but they had Bruce Wayne from the Batman. So I thought that was kind of a curious choice. I don't know if it was what they had on hand and that was the only thing that they can kind of pass through customs as they were flying. But then they also had the recently revealed Michael Jackson, which is still not available to market. It still hasn't shipped out. It's still kind of in its unveiling phase, where they like revealed it not just a matter of days prior to this event, but they're currently working out the kinks to making sure that they can take it to mass production. And then over on the far left, they had figures that they've never showcased before, they haven't revealed on social media, and even they proclaim themselves that they haven't really had them outside of China up until San Diego Comic-Con weekend, whether it be on the floor or during this event, which is a trio of Walking Dead figures, specifically arguably the three most popular characters out of the Walking Dead TV show, Rick, Daryl, and Negan. Looking, in my opinion, pretty good. I think the Negan one is just a little off. They could probably work a little bit extra on that head sculpt, but the clothing is there, the scaling is there, Lucille looks awesome. But the two that I looked at and went, yo, those two are legit. I don't know if I'll pick them up, but I wouldn't blame anybody for adding these to their inner collection, would be the Daryl and the Rick. They actually look pretty sweet. And then over on some of the other tables, I also had a couple of other Lord of the Rings collectibles. They had a 1/3 scale statue. It wasn't a figure, but a statue of Aragorn. And then on another table, it looked like a legit 1/6 scale figure of the Nazgul, which I believe is also a first-time reveal. I don't think anybody has gotten eyes on that thing. So that was kind of an exclusive to the event. Wasn't even on the show floor, if I'm not mistaken, during the exhibitor hall in San Diego Comic-Con. So that was pretty neat. But then as I rotated the table, I then gazed upon to me, the main attraction, the reason for why I was very curious to see what they had up their sleeve, which is going to be their series of 1/12 scale figures under the Stonerow brand. So to kind of clarify, I saw this banner that read Stonerow, and basically what this was is that this is going to be their way to differentiate from the 1/6 scale market and strictly just have it be connected and branded to 1/12. They want to make sure that when you hear INART, you think 1/6 scale, and you don't just think, oh, it's a bunch of figures, they do this, but they also do that. They're trying to segment it and differentiate it as much as possible. So from now on, Stonerow is going to be 1/12, and 1/6 is going to be strictly tailored to INART, to that branding. It's kind of similar to, you got Powerade, which is, your electrified drink, but most people, I think nowadays, they used to, but I think nowadays a lot of kids specifically don't know that Powerade is pretty much owned by Coca-Cola. It's Coca-Cola juice, but they call it Powerade. And being in the 1/12 market, Stonerow is looking to at least be a form of answer by INART to go a little bit on the smaller scale, practically be a bit more affordable, while at the same time being able to hone in on what they've kind of came to be known by with INART, with the 1/6 scale, which is very realistic head sculpts, the tailoring of the suits, but at the same time knowing that they're going for a smaller scale, going for that collectability factor, going for articulation, maybe even going for accessories, and at the same time being able to make something that is, like I said, a little bit more affordable, but at the same time what I like to consider is prosumer. So nothing that is necessarily brick and mortar like McFarlane Toys or Marvel Legends, where you can just walk into a Target, walk into a Walmart and pick it up for about 20 to 25, maybe $30. But you can go to fan channels like Big Bad Toy Store, Entertainment Earth, and kind of pay a little bit of an extra premium, somewhere north to about 80, 90, maybe even 100 or 110 bucks. And from what I can gather and kind of deduce via informations and answers, specifically during the Q&A portion of the event towards the end, they didn't necessarily iron out a specific price point. I feel like it might kind of vary depending on the figure and depending on the character, but it looks like that range is in fact going between the $80 to maybe as high as $120 range, which to me means that it's pitting them up against Mafex and Figuarts. Like, those are the two main names, and maybe Amazing Yamaguchi / Revoltech, but to me, the main two brands that this kind of puts them into competition with is Figuarts and Mafex. No matter how much they kept saying during the Q&A that their idea is not to compete with anybody and not to have competition, even though some people interpret that as them trying to go hard with that answer, I'm sorry, but the optics is always going to look competitive, and I feel like that's something that the sooner they become self-aware of, the better, in my opinion. And I'm not necessarily saying that the 1/12 scale line is completely brand new, and this is our first time ever hearing about it. I think not too long ago they had a Hong Kong event where there was some photos that are kind of, I don't know if they were leaked or properly posted online by someone that was told that they were okay to post them online, but it looked like there were photos of a 1/12 scale Christian Bale Batman with a rather realistic looking head, but albeit you can see that some of the details were slightly mitigated because you can tell that it's a smaller scale figure. You can see the joints and the paneling on the figure, it's on the body itself, but again, it kind of measures up to that scale, which is going to be a lot smaller versus the 1/6 scale. So you're going to lose a little bit of that detailing, a little bit of that realism. But this kind of begged the question, is a 1/12 line kind of on the way? Because at the time, they didn't have a name, they didn't have like an official reveal type event. They just kind of put it on the table and said, let's see what people kind of talk about in relation to this Bale Batman. Well, now we have plenty of more figures that seem to be the headliners for their 1/12 scale Stonerow line. And those are the ones you're going to be seeing right here that were present at this event. First and foremost, Batman Arkham Origins. That's right, guys. I got the No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm not gonna be going. No, I'm not gonna do it. This is not the No. If anything, this is a recently dusted and cleaned DC Collectibles or DC Direct. I think it was DC Collectibles Arkham Origins Batman that I got. I think we're now coming up on about 11 years. Yeah, I think that's when 2013 was when Arkham Origins dropped, right? So 11 years ago, I picked this bad boy up as part of this, like, I think 4-pack or no, I think it was individual release because I thought that the suit was legitimately cool. And since then, it's kind of shocking to me and the rest of the community that we have not had McFarlane Toys either as a DC Direct off, one shot, or under their proper DC Multiverse line, an Arkham Origins Batman, because they tackled Arkham Asylum / City Batman, Arkham Knight Batman. Where's Arkham Origins? Now, granted, there's probably some licensing problems because that's technically Warner Bros. Montreal and not Rocksteady. I don't know what the exact specifics of that are, but it looks like where McFarlane Toys has kind of slept, INART with Stonerow is sneaking in to really deliver on something pretty quality for the Arkham Origins version of Batman, and that is some truly untapped potential, because you can see right here that one of the first figures that drew my eye like lightning was an 1/12 scale INART / Stonerow Batman Arkham Origins Batman figure. And from first glance, it doesn't look too far off from what you see before you right here. But once you get a little up close and personal, specifically with the footage you're about to see, is that you can obviously see that it's an actual suit tailored over some form of premium body. You see that an awful lot of the scenes, specifically like around the elbows and the knees, are actual tailored fabrics. And that means that they pretty much kind of took maybe some plastic paneling, some parts of the suit, and just kind of stitched it together in a mixed media form to then develop this suit that encompasses the majority of the body, and the only area where it kind of segments a little bit will probably be around the shoulder area and, of course, the head. The head looks like a completely sculpted separate piece, but it definitely looks a bit more quality, a bit more premium with some refined details to the head versus that of a DC Collectibles or DC Direct. Because even though this is not a bad head sculpt, especially for the price that you're paying at about 20 to 25 bucks, it's you get what you paid for. There's no other way to really kind of explain it, but seeing it at least from this side of the glass during this event, I can see a little bit better stubbling when it comes to the actual mouth plate. The eyes are a bit more pronounced, and then of course the cowl is very well chiseled, and it's definitively the Arkham Origins version. But to me, I think the standouts when I was looking at this Batman was, like I said, a little bit of the tailoring and the fabricating, that is that even a word? Fabrications of the suit itself around the elbow and knee area, and then seeing the cape, I couldn't really tell, but it looked like an actual, I don't want to say cloth cape, but it was definitely some sort of fabric that is very cape-like. It looks like it's going to be made out of that material. I don't know what to call it. It better than nylon, but not full-on like a leathery, maybe pleather or something, but it definitely looked like it was kind of wrapping the figure. I almost kind of wish that one of the INART guys would at least go in there and just kind of grab it and move it and just demonstrate it for the camera, but everybody was busy. So I tried to shoot as much as possible for that Batman, because that was definitely one of the standouts to me. And to see that all these years later, McFarlane still hasn't taken advantage, or hell, even Mafex and Figuarts, it looks like finally someone's going to be able to fill in that vacant spot for a really good quality prosumer Arkham Origins Batman. And you could bet your ass that once it kind of comes to market and pre-orders come out, I will definitely be locking one down so that I can do a proper review of it, maybe do a comparison to the DC Direct that you see right here, and we'll kind of take it from there. The only other question that I was kind of left with when I was looking at this Batman was that, and this kind of encompasses the rest of the figures in the 112 series, was that it was just the figures in the glass case, and I didn't really see any other indication of accessories. And when it comes to a character, a very gadget centric character like Batman, it would be a major disservice and a major error on INART / Stonerow's part to provide these figures with quality materials, quality kind of stitching, and all these different things that they added to make this a very prosumer product, and then just kind of haphazardly deliver on accessories. All right, I obviously we need the batarangs and the grapple, but definitely give it a very good amount. Don't just do like one batarang and one grapple. Definitely provide a plethora of an armament for characters that deserve it. Obviously, not every single character needs to do this, but someone like Batman, I will gladly pay somewhere north of about 100 to 110 bucks for a Batman of that caliber with that quality. But at the same time, you have like 3 or 4 batarangs, a grapple, you have the explosive gel gun, the sonar batarang, What else did he have in Arkham Origins? Like a thermal thing to, kind of take care of the cold environment. I can't remember, but he had plenty of other accessories, and maybe even a Joker card or something like that, or black masks, empty masks that he was going after. It's, the sky's the limit, and that'll be nice to see that someone can finally deliver an awesome Arkham Origins Batman. Right next to him was Catwoman from The Dark Knight Rises, so the Anne Hathaway portrayal. And very similar to the Arkham Origins Batman, I can tell that, yeah, there was some segmentation with like the head and maybe a little bit around the ankle area, but for the most part, it also looked like another very specific body type for her, a female body with her exact physique and proportions, but then it was kind of covered up by an overall leotard suit, where I saw the elbow areas, the knee areas, all that stuff that was actually covered up. I didn't see really any joints, and so being a much more agile and lean physique for a character like Catwoman, I'm expecting the articulation to also be very fluid and very accommodating for the character, to make sure that it's a very posable character, which also brought up another point of contention with some people, because shortly when Comic-Con started and the show floor opened up and people noticed that there was an INART pop-up there, people then took to social media to post photos of a Bruce Lee 1/12 scale figure, but people were criticizing it for what they perceived as a very egregious mid-torso cut right here where his abdomen and his muscles were. And so people were like, oh, you can see the mid-torso, you can see the articulation, and I'm over here like, it's 1/12 scale. Of course, they're gonna have to make this entire canvas, this entire thing that they're working with, smaller. They need to make those joints. Eventually, you're not gonna be able to like create a silicone body to cover it up. It's not gonna be like Hot Toys or like with INART. Or like with INART in their Joker and the seamless forearms. They're not gonna be able to do that. Alright? They're going smaller, and some compromises are going to be made. And to me, I feel like that's one of the compromises that you're just gonna have to eat. Now, frankly, Bruce Lee, it is going to be a little bit of an eyesore because he's shirtless. You see the musculature, which is really well done. And you also got that amazing head sculpt that looks pretty photorealistic. But eventually, you're going to have to come to terms with those seams and, of course, the breaks for the articulation. Now, when a very clothed character or a very paneled and armorized character like Batman, let alone that Catwoman, comes around, you'll notice that they're going to at least try to take advantage of the suit as much as possible to cover those seams up. And I feel like that's one of the strengths that Stonerow can really play into. The only thing that I will also have to kind of concede as a form of sacrifice, but I still think that there's a way to kind of maybe squeeze this in later on, maybe not with the initial releases, but as time goes on and they kind of nail down the science, would have to be some sort of wool hair implementation. So I'm not expecting super rooted hair, not to the levels of the 1/6 scale like with Joker, with Batman, with Aragorn. Nothing necessarily like that, but just something that, again, kind of adds that premium flair. So with a character like Catwoman, just kind of, it doesn't have to be like the most realistic hair. It could be like doll hair, Barbie hair, but try to create these magic tricks, like with her having the mask with the goggles, use that to press it down so that it doesn't get all frayed and stiff because of the quality of the hair, but you still can feel the hair so that it feels like a very quality head sculpt, while at the same time delivering on the Anne Hathaway likeness, or at least on like some of the little characteristics of the face to make it seem like something very premium. I think that would come a long way. So those, to me, in my opinion, were the standouts of the 1/12. We then get into a series of figures that I know McFarlane Toys collectors are probably sick of at this point. So it's very, very peculiar that Stonerow is tackling the Dark Knight's Metal Wave. Yeah, that was actually the majority of the rest of these figures that were present at the table. Dark Knight's metal characters, specifically Green Lantern Batman, Devastator Batman, and the Batman Who Laughs. Yeah, those three were here. And don't get me wrong, they looked great. They looked like very posable, very articulated, while at the same time also delivering on some of the quality details of the fabric of the suits. But this is probably the only area that I will be a little bit critical on Stonerow, because the Arkham Origins and the Catwoman were legitimately blowing me away by simply just being in a glass case. It was then the Dark Knight's Metal Wave where I saw great sculpt work and paint detail with some of the facial capturings of the Green Lantern Batman, with like the face being all messed up right here around the mouth area, but then you see all the ridges and different intricacies of the suit, and then you get to that Devastator Batman that looked legitimately badass. And frankly, the best way that I can describe it all is that all three look like articulated statues, like statue quality 1/12 figures, but they still had the articulation to be able to be posable and movable and not feel like you're breaking the figure or compromising it in any kind of way. With that said, there were certain angles from when I was shooting the footage, and then when I finally put the camera down and told myself, just look at the figures, extrapolate as much visual data as possible, and really take it in, kind of arrived at the conclusion that as good as they looked, there were times, specifically the Green Lantern and the Devastator Batman, where I'm like, from certain angles, they look like just much more polished McFarlanes. You know what I mean? Like, they looked much cleaner, much more vibrant, much more detailed McFarlane figures still. So I saw a legit reason for Arkham Origins Batman and Catwoman existing in the scale and with this amount of detail, but I didn't see the reason for the Dark Knight's Metal. And that still begs the question as to why they went with Dark Knight's Metal in the first place. I think that these slots maybe could have been utilized for something else. And I gotta be honest, at the far end, making his very late appearance, there was this really Power Rangers looking Flash. I don't know if it was a Dark Knight's Metal Flash or from some other Elseworld kind of storyline. I personally don't know, so if somebody in the comments can let me know which Flash this is. Again, intricacies and detail and paint applications were cool, but it didn't do anything to make me go, yeah, I'm picking this up specifically from Stonerow, because the needle wasn't moved necessarily, unless there's probably going to be some cool accessories to come with it. And trust me, I did kind of want to ask some of the INART guides right there, like, which Flash is this from? What inspired you guys to kind of take on the Dark Knight's Metal wave? Who's coming next? But unfortunately, we were kind of compressed for time, and trust me, I do have quite a series of questions to hopefully at some point ask Quinn Studios /INART /Stonerow, because I do eventually kind of want to have a sit down, whether it be in person, which was kind of the plan to do so at this event, but like I said, unfortunately we kind of ran out of time. But eventually I do want to do some form of interview, either through Zoom or in person, about different things that the average 1/12 collector, or at least the prosumer 1/12 collector that kind of specializes in Figuarts and Mafex, can kind of come to expect out of Stonerow, since they're kind of entering this market. And that was the series of questions that I had, and trust me, some of them could be some of the more hard-pressed ones, because INART has in fact come under a little bit of scrutiny, at least with the 1/6 scale line. You know, there were some of the criticisms as far as production timetables and shipping and, you know, getting certain products into people's hands, even though it's been a while. I mean, the actual girth of time that it took for the reveal of the INART rooted hair double pack Joker from the Dark Knight to when it finally got into people's hands from reliable sellers, not necessarily people from eBay or people that were based in Hong Kong, but like reliable sellers like Spec Fiction and 1/6 Kit and all these people. And there's definitely something there to address for the 1/6 market, but from my perspective, I was very, very curious to see how exactly this is going to be reflecting on Stonerow. Are they going to be able to take some of those criticisms and being able to apply them to Stonerow to make sure that they don't repeat? Or what's the different strategy for distribution? What's their timetable? How are they planning on, you know, making sure that this is something that's very premium quality as far as, like I said, the stitching, but at the same time not sacrificing certain things? Or are they going to have to make those sacrifices, like making sure that some of the articulation is present and kind of in your face, but at least it's very fluid and there's only so much that they can work with? Like I said, I had so many questions, and I'm hoping that one day I can have a sit down with somebody at INART to break them down. But to be frank, during the Q&A portion, there were a couple of these questions that I had that were in fact somewhat answered. Some of them specifically around certain licenses, you know, what's going to be globally licensed versus what they're practically not going to touch. Because trust me, it's cool to see that you have Batman, Batman, and Batman, or variations of Batman, or things taken from a Batman storyline within the 1/12 market. But, you know, at the same time, we also have to be fair across the board and ask, what about other characters? What about other properties? And, well, I can tell you right now, I can see certain properties that they won't tackle. while being coy, there was one question where somebody brought up Star Wars for the 1/6 scale line, and almost like that, one of the folks at INART said straight up no. And my assumption is not so much that they don't like Star Wars or they don't want to touch that. In fact, I kind of got the vibe that they do want to bring some really realistic competitive products to Hot Toys for the 1/6 scale market that involves Star Wars characters, specifically stuff from maybe the expanded universe that we haven't seen figures for. But this is Star Wars we're talking about, which is a property owned with an iron grip by the conglomerate known as Disney. And I feel like licenses can sometimes be, to put it mildly, a huge bitch when it comes to acquiring. And I feel like out of all the properties out there, anything that's under the Mickey Mouse umbrella, whether it be Marvel or Star Wars, is just like a no. We're not even going to bother with that. And that's why I feel like I already have to write off the possibility that in a 1/12 format, a Spidey, whether it be a classic Spidey or an ultimate Spidey, or an INART Tobey Maguire 1/12 Spidey that can now rival the newly announced up for pre-order Mafex, or the since released Figuarts with some compromises there on that figure, and then of course Andrew, but with a much more realistic, true to life head, because Mafex, I love you, but that Andrew head does not look right. It doesn't even look like him, to be quite honest. So to have an INART tackle that would be amazing, but I can already see myself kind of scratching that out as a possibility, because like I said, it just seems like that's a licensing issue that they do not want to tackle. So I'm curious to see, and that would definitely be one of my questions as far as what would be the licenses they could tackle. Who's the next Batman in the 1/12? We got Bale, we got Arkham Origins. Are they going to be able to tackle more of from the Arkham storyline on Arkham Knight, or maybe some other characters from the Arkham property, like a little mini Joker? I feel like Joker deserves a little bit more of love from the Rocksteady universe when Rocksteady was good. And then, of course, other interpretations of Batman that we just never seen come to life in this manner. Or, sure, bring us some ones that we have seen, like Batfleck, Pattinson, I think is almost kind of a certainty. But in the 1/12 scale is very, very, very intriguing. And you know me, if it's 1/12 then it's Batman, I will be covering it on the channel. So this is kind of serving as a confirmation to end this video on, that when INART is /Stonerow is ready to share more on the 1/12 market or on their 1/12 line, and it's going to be involving more Batman, whether it be the Arkham Origins that you saw in some of this footage, or the Catwoman, or some of these Dark Knight Metals entries, as well as some other stuff that they have coming down the pipeline that they haven't revealed as of yet, I will be more than glad to cover it on the channel, because this is actually pretty exciting. And as we always say, competition always is great for the consumer, because it just breeds competition. Mafex or Figuarts or even FonJoy is going to look at this and be like, we got to step up their game, and who ends up winning whenever that happens? We do. So that's always a plus for us. And at the same time, like I said, going down the wish list of what we could have in the future is, it just boosts the Batman serotonin. And with that, I now throw it over to you guys. With INART /Stonerow now tackling 1/12 scale figures that are, like I said, a little bit more on the prosumer, where they could be somewhere between 80 to 100 bucks, depending on accessories, depending on material. But is this something that you guys are down for? Would you shelve out the money if you can get INART quality, but then with the articulation and the accessories of the smaller stuff, so it's a bit more on the affordable side, but a bit more collectible? You got more room space on your detofs or on the shelves to be able to collect more of these Batman. And furthermore, what's on your wish list of figures that you would love to see INART /Stonerow tackle in this wave of 1/12 scale figures? Because the possibilities, I mean, there's no shortage of Batman. So I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys have to list down in the comment section below. And thank you guys for your patience in putting this INART video. And hoping to tackle some more stuff from INART /Stonerow in the future. Until then, though, stay humble, and I'll see you guys later.